Okay.
So, Mom, you were 85 2 days ago. So, your birthday, February 21st, 1923. And we're just going to record your family history here. And let's start with your mom, Grandma Rose. And you just start talking to Rich and tell him who she was, who were her parents, who were your aunts and uncles.
Well, her name was Rose.
What was her maiden name?
Ocudo.
Okay. And what part of Italy?
Cosenza.
And that's Calabria?
Mm-hmm.
Calabria, Italy.
Mm-hmm.
Cosenza. So what were her parents? Do you remember your grandparents' names?
Grandfather's name was Joseph. My grandmother's name was Mary. Maria.
Do you remember how many aunts and uncles you had?
I had two of them were dead before I was even born, so
Okay.
the ones I remember is the Uncle Frank, and then there was Amelia, and her husband's name was Tony, and then Italia, and her husband's name was Pete. Auntie Denina, and her husband's name was Joe.
Okay. Do you remember what year your mom came from Italy?
Gotta figure that out. John was 4 years old when he came over.
So who's John?
John is her first husband.
Her first husband's name was John Milletta?
Mm-hmm.
And
No, that was the boy's name.
Okay, so John was her first son.
Mm-hmm.
What was her husband's name?
Ernesto.
Ernesto Milletta.
Mm-hmm.
And so your brother John was about 4 when your mom came from
Mm-hmm.
Italy?
And
what
he was just 92, so
He would have just turned 92?
yeah, he turned 92. He would have been 92 on the 4th of February.
So I'll figure that out. But so when Grandma came to Italy, tell a story of how she got here.
Okay,
what
now,
happened.
the story she told us ever since we were little was that her husband and her one brother, came to the United States after World War I to make a new home for themselves. And they ended up in St. Louis. So when they got a job, I don't remember what kind of work they got, but when they got to work, they had enough money saved that they sent for Mama and John. And on her way over, they both got that influenza that was going on. And they both died by the time she reached New York.
So what happened?
So she was there for 10 days. And finally, her husband's cousin came from St. Louis to take her off the boat, and he gave her a choice. Either go back to Italy with your parents, or you can stay here, because at that time there was a lot of match marriages.
Right.
And that's what it was. And he said that he knew this fella that had 6 kids, and he was a railroad man, and he had a good job in Montana. So she had her choice, either marrying him or go back to Italy. And she decided to marry my dad.
So how did she get to Montana?
Wait, now let's stop right there.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard that story many, many times from my mother.
Mm-hmm.
A year ago, I heard another story from the Milletta side.
Oh, and what was that?
And that was Joe Milletta
Mm-hmm.
said that my mother was madly in love with this Muletta kid who came from a well-to-do family.
Ernesto?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And they used to meet at the well, and she got pregnant. So, and I can believe this to one point because my grandmother was mean.
Mm-hmm.
So when my grandmother and grandfather found out that she was pregnant, they kicked her out. And his parents came and got her, and she lived with them.
Oh.
Now that's what she told Joe,
Okay. Okay.
and that's all I know on that part.
Okay. And was that in the same village?
No, that was, Mom lived in the place called, it was up in the mountains called La Macchia
With the Mulettas?
with the Mulettas.
Okay. Okay. All right. So there's
So there's
the two stories,
conflict.
whatever. And
Yeah.
but eventually she came to America. Her
Mhm.
husband was dead.
Mhm.
If if Uncle John was born, if he would have been 92, that means he was born in 1916. So if he was 4 when they came to America, that would have been 1920.
Yeah, but
That
it'd
sound
be
about
about
right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so she chose to marry who?
John.
John Zagata.
Hmm.
And so how did she get to Montana from St. Louis?
She came by herself from Chicago
Oh.
to the Indian reservation in a little town called Browning, Montana.
How did she get to Chicago? Is that where her cousin was? Or I thought her cousin was in St. Louis. No?
No, yeah, he was, but he paid her way into Chicago,
Oh, and then she took a train
Yeah.
to Browning, Montana.
Mm-hmm.
And she married your dad
In Cupbank, Montana.
and his name again?
John.